Good afternoon, and what is a cool, bright and sunny day. It is Monday the 2nd of January 2023. I am back in the reading nook with a nice hot cup of tea. And some parcels to unbox. I'm going to delve into this one. And what I'm pull out is getting caught. Corner's getting caught. There we go. Is this, which is Regency Cthulhu, Dark Designs in Jane Austen's England. Call of Cthulhu, Regency Cthulhu. Regency England is a time of social niceties, grand balls, romantic intrigues and disappointments, as described in the novels of Jane Austen. Yet through the lens of the Cthulhu mythos, horrors weave themselves into the hearts of everyday Georgians, from the richest to the poorest. Step into the Regency era and work to uncover the dark secrets of the heart of the town of Terryford. Twisted horrors that have lain dormant for centuries now seek to burst forth into England. Regency Cthulhu, Dark Designs in Jane Austen's England is a historical sourcebook for Call of Cthulhu. Inside you will find details on Regency era England, 1811 to 1820, rules for creating Regency era investigators, along with new period appropriate skills and occupations. The detailed primer on the fictional town of Terryford for use as a campaign setting in both in 1813 and 1913. 2 scenarios with handouts and maps designed to introduce players to the Regency era and the mysteries of Terryford. New rules for character reputation and estates, as well as Regency era equipment and weapons. 6 pre-generated Call of Cthulhu investigators and 6 pulp Cthulhu investigators ready to pick up and play. So, this is a supplement which you can play with the standard Call of Cthulhu 7th edition rules, or you can add on the pulp Cthulhu rules if you want it to be a bit more action orientated, a little bit more forgiving in terms of your approach to fighting or confronting the mythos. So, now this is an interesting period to set a role-playing game in, because society is highly conservative and stratified, and you don't really you don't really stray beyond essentially your social level, and if you do, you are kind of frowned upon, if not outright censured, depending upon your behaviour. So what we've got in here, starting here, is nice period piece, and a bit of catching a bit of the pomp and circumstances, because this is sort of like it sort of covers the end of the Napoleonic War and the upheavals that followed since, with the men coming home and the economic upheavals, and especially around the Corn Laws, and you've got things like the Peterloo Massacre, 1819, and then this is the period where the Prince Regent, because of the Regency, essentially governs in charge instead of his father, King George III, who is seriously ill during this period, until he becomes Prince George becomes George IV in 1820. So, okay, nice map of basically England, rather than necessarily, we've got not really concentrating on Scotland there, explaining the Regency era, Jane Austen's England, and the life of Jane Austen, because essentially her books that Northanger Abbey, Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, and so on, Sense and Sensibility, are the mainstays for the inspiration for this supplement. So we've got notes on consent, sexuality in the period, both maturely handled, I'm sure, and also on race and ethnicity in Regency England. Now, despite what you might see depicted in films and so on, because obviously the films depict Jane Austen's society, what she was writing about, England in the period is a lot more diverse and so on, but it's not seen, and that's sort of like part of the sort of like challenge of role playing this, where you're what would be seen as adverse choices in terms of gender, sexuality, and so on, would go against the norm. So yeah, and then of course on top of that, you've got to imagine you have society wants you to act properly and be prim and proper and so on, and you're going off and investigate the mythos. So that's going to be really different. So we've got notes here on transport, technology, currency. Then we've got a Georgian timeline, and that covers the whole of the Georgian period. So from 1714, when George the First is crowned, joint king of England and Hanover, or basically Great Britain and Ireland and Hanover, of course, all the way through up reign of George II, George III, George IV, through the Napoleonic Wars, until it comes to an end with the coronation of Victoria in 1857, which ushers in the Victorian age, and of course that's really kind of covered with Cthulhu by gaslight. So here we get on to creating a Regency investigator. Nice piece of artwork, quite subtle there in its horror if you look closely, and this motif appears throughout the book. And you've also got a brief introduction to the Regency era for those people who basically just want to get the basics of what they're setting and so on, rather than read a whole sort of like chapter on the history. I enjoyed the history on the chapter. I would rather read the whole chapter on the history. Sorry, the whole chapter on the history, personally. But there we go. So we've got a list of Regency occupations. We've got new ones in there, and ones marked as suitable. So the new ones include the gentlewoman, the gentleman, the servant, footman, and servant housemaid are the new ones, and then also the nouveau riche. Nouveau riche essentially would have been a member of sort of like either the professional class or the wealthy mercantile class, who were just attempting to make their way in society into that band known as the landed gentry, which were wealthy. Didn't need to work necessarily unless it was kind of like, had a job sort of like almost as a hobby for the men, whilst the women, of course, went off and did embroidery, painting, and learned to sing and play the piano, and that's it. And then, of course, were expected to marry early, and then develop into their children. And there are lots of characters in here that kind of break that mould as well. You don't necessarily have to fit that mould. You can play it in the tone of, say, Bridgerton, where it's a lot more diverse. So there are those options there too. There's even options in here, I think, is essentially for playing sort of like a rather than doing like an upstairs campaign, you do a downstairs campaign where you play members of the servants to a household, and you go and investigate mysteries and so on. You've got an organisation, Regency Fight Club. So if you want to essentially an organisation which the player characters, the investigators, can join during the Regency era, that's given. So explanations of all the new occupations. Then we get on to new rules. We've got occupation bans, and this is where essentially the constraints of society begin to limit your choices in terms of essentially your credit rating and what you did. Changes occupation, fashion becomes more important skill, as does etiquette. Instead of hypnosis, you've got mesmerism, and instead of psychoanalysis, because that's not yet been formulated, we have reassurance. So there, dear, it's going to you'll be all right. We've got rules for reputation, and reputation is sort of like the social equivalent of sanity. It's social sanity, as it were, and it can lead to you being, depending upon your behaviour and your actions, can lead to you being censured. Let's see, there's a really fantastic piece of illustration here earlier, which set that off very nicely. I can't find it. But anyway, so we've got a complete setting in the form of Tarriford, which is a Wiltshire rural town, somewhere between Salisbury and Bath, and it's all very. I mean, if you've watched any kind of any of the films based upon Austen's works, you'll have a feel for what it looks like, and if, like me, you're from that local area, not exactly, but I'm pretty close, then you'll have an idea you know, what it's like, and what it feels like, even in a modern, you know, in modern updating. It's not that it's still a small town, and small towns always feel that kind of way. So yeah, let's see if I can find that piece of artwork, because I was really impressed by it. Sorry, cold fingers. Oh, here we go. There we go. So yeah, that's that sort of behaviour that's unacceptable. Depicted that in sort of like a cartoon style, sort of like the works of James Gilray, the political satirist from the period, who drew infamous cartoons of George III and the Prince Regent. So you've got this complete town, Tarryford. It's got all sort of like various NPCs and details of them, you know, and they've all got their secrets and so on. So the player characters could essentially, you know, they could play a Jane Austen style campaign without really straying into the mythos at all if you wanted. It's all possible. But if you do, you've got the first of two scenarios in here. This is the long corridor. It takes place at a ball, and then afterwards, and you've got a nice handout. Lord and Lady Northlake invite you to a ball. Got the timeline and the NPCs, important NPCs. Floor plans of Northlake Hall, which will be the site for the ball. And so on, and then we've got the anomalous corridor, i.e. the long corridor of the title, and then we get into the dark realm and secrets to be revealed. And they've got details on how to investigate the North Lakes, because obviously it's going to be a bit difficult in this age. In this age where records are limited, and you have to, you know, be careful not to be seen to pry. So there's a fantastic balance there, I think, in the game. You know, and it brings out, you know, you've got to bring out, you know, you've got to role play that too, and that brings out a bit more challenge to the investigation. So that's the first scenario. That's meant to be a short one, and then we have the emptiness within, which is the longest scenario, and this is a sequel of sorts. You know, takes place shortly afterwards, so details of what's going on, details even of the Grand Tour there, although this scenario itself doesn't involve the Grand Tour. Scenario timeline, all the NPCs. It's really like this style of illustration. It's fitting, and the other great thing is I think they're all separate. I do like that. It's excellent. So you've got maps, of course, but that's a nice cutaway of one of the locations. Doesn't use that format very often. I think that's just a single use. So it's quite a lengthy scenario, which multiple sessions, and we've got a sort of player's map as well, or at least a map for the keeper's reference. Sorry. And then beyond that, after all everything, essentially, we've got a set of pre-generated investigators, a variety of characters there. Again, more of this really nicely done artwork. And these are designed to be played with the two scenarios and in Tarrytown, and as you can see, all of them have got pulp adjustments there. So you know, add this if you want to play these scenarios in pulp mode. And then last, you know, that's the first appendix. Then we've got equipment tables and miscellanea, including a complete glossary of Regency costumes and various pieces of item clothing, weapons, and then an update, Tarryford in 1913. So yeah, I mean, so you could use that certainly as a basis for a campaign, sort of like prior to World War I, and then you've got the various maps and so on repeated at the back, and handouts, and it comes to a close with bibliography. So yeah, that is got a couple of character sheets in there as well. So that's Regency Cthulhu from Chaosium. Sadly, I mean, okay, not sad. I mean, there are 2 good scenarios in there, and you know, and you're going to want more, I think, after playing it, because I think this is a really interesting setting in which to investigate the mythos and role play it. Going to be a real challenge. I'm going to appeal to those people who like Jane Austen's work as well. I'm really quite impressed with just the look of this, and I made it one of my picks from last year, and you'll find a full review of it down below. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below, and of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post that. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you'll see me out here with a package containing a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do hit the subscribe button down below. Once again, thanks for watching another unboxing in the Nook. Be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.